The Brisbane Lions Fancast, we are back thanks to Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. Make sure you check those guys out at hoponbrewerytours.com.au and crispcoms.co, giving you the free Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers. They're in stock, they're being mailed out. Head to our website if you want to get your hands on some, brisbanelionsfancast.com.au. Well, I mean, the headline from this week, round 4 gather round, it is good to get a bloody win, isn't it? It's been a minute.
Been a hot 6 months. No wins, but here we are. 1 and 3. Sounds a lot better than the other ones involving a naught. So
Yeah, 100%. And look, got to keep in mind the opposition that we were playing. That obviously does play into it, but generally good to get a win. Good for morale. Good for confidence. Good to get a few players playing the sort of footy that we know they can play. Obviously, the key forwards leading that charge. Lockie had a great game. Klug had a great game. Dunks had a fantastic game as well. There were very few that had a poor game. The first 3 weeks, we could have pointed to a lot of passengers. Harder to do this week. I really felt on Friday night after the game had wrapped up, I felt like I was way too heavily invested in almost at a coach level because I immediately started thinking about next week. I was like, oh, well, we got Melbourne at the MCG Thursday night. We've got to start thinking about that now. And I didn't even give myself time to enjoy a 70-point win, which was kind of sad. Just how much of a footy nuffy that I am, that I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, great, we've beaten North by 70 points. But if we play that game again, if we play that exact sort of footy that we did just then, is that beating Melbourne at the MCG? Charlie Comben and Aiden Core, not exactly Stephen May and Jake Lear, are they?
no, they're not. And admittedly, I don't know what was going on, but KO was wigging out for the last 5 minutes of that game for me. I was watching a little bit on delay just because I'd been out and about. So I was, probably 15 minutes behind. But yeah, I was getting stutters every 15 seconds, so much so that I just checked the score and didn't get to see the last 5 minutes. So
Oh, how annoying.
if anything happened then, don't ask because it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So thanks. Also, it's great to be getting notifications saying 4K is not supported on your TV. And it's like, well, it should be. It's definitely a 4K TV.
Seems like a cop-out.
Be out of your mind. So, KO, what a bunch of bastards. And I would be trying to get off board if that were possible. But as it is, it's not. So, stuck with it. Yeah, very much the case of, I think the win kind of didn't register to anyone really. It was just they won. We kind of thought they would, but glad they did. The Brisbane Lions subreddit was entirely crickets.
Yeah, well, no one
has been since. So
it's good. It means no one's coming for blood. They're not going Eric Hipwood this, Jared Berry that. And I guess it would have been nice to have that feeling the first couple of weeks because all 3 winnable games that we had ourselves in, especially the 2 at home. So I guess it is sort of a business as usual feeling to it, especially considering the opposition. The bright side is, and I did put this in our Discord chat, which you're free to join at any time. All the links are available at our website. The bright side is that, we did keep North to their lowest score by about 5 goals as well. They ran with Carlton for a best part of a half, 3/4 last week before Carlton kicked away. And still North ended up on 82 odd points. Against GWS, they kicked 11 goals or something like that. So 10, 11 goals. So that's a plus that we managed to blunt them more than any other opposition has so far. So that's something, I guess.
well, scoring shots as well. They almost halved the amount. So 6 goals, 6 is not a lot. Not that they've been particularly inaccurate. They seem to be quite accurate as I'm just going back having a look. But yeah, I mean that's good. I think we dealt with their midfield, which we'd spoken in the week that might have been a potential to cause us issue. Guys like LDU and Wardlaw and just bigger, like big bodies
Yep.
and like a lot of speed through the contest. It's a bit like I guess lucky they don't have Horn Francis at this point in time because it would be a pretty good looking midfield at this point. But the sort of thing that has kind of caused us a few issues, but I think it was handled reasonably pretty well, and it was almost like they were trying to take Lockie out of the game with Wardlaw doing a tagging job, and that's scary because he'll learn a lot for the future, but for the now,
Yeah.
happy with the amount that we were sort of in control. So
Well, Lockie and Dunks in particular in the midfield, I mean, the whole midfield was really good. Like our starting three, Klug, Dunkley, and Neil, they all had great games. But those two in particular, Neil and Dunkley, really, it felt like they came out with a point to prove this week. Like, we've heard everything that's been said across the week. We know we're 0-3. All right, it's time to put up or shut up type thing. So it sort of had that air about it for those two in particular. Neil had one of the great first halves, one of the great first quarters. He eventually quietened down a little bit and then was obviously subbed off with that ankle that's been causing him a little bit of stress. But all right, let's go back to the start. In comes Darcy Gardner and Jimmy Tunstall after a hot start to the season in the VFL. Out goes Fort, which we sort of all saw coming. Lohman played the full game, which we will obviously chat about very soon as well. And who else came out of that one?
so Dev Rob came out.
That's right, yeah, which is a bit of a shame, but
I guess there's context around that we'll touch on when we talk about Kai, but I mean it was kind of the bare minimum that could be done in terms of changes. I feel it seemed like in the lead up, just in terms of like some of the stuff from the rooms, there was almost like a really overt showing by the playing group. Them all kind of like having hugs and stuff like that, and all kind of it almost seemed like they were kind of overcorrecting the idea that there isn't
yep,
any kind of problem in the dressing room we touched on last week. And similarly, when there were, particularly Charlie Cameron and Hipwood being under quite a lot of pressure within the fan base, within the wider footy community, big showings of, emotional gratitude towards them. Make of that what you will. Is it an overcompensation? Possibly, but also could just be good for those guys to sort of feel like they're part of something and not dragging us down and making us horrible. So
it was also the very first thing that Fague said in his press conference afterwards. It was like, yeah, he tried to work the word brotherhood in the first 16 seconds if he could, and he did. He really made a point of like, yeah, we wanted to show how united we are. We wanted to show that the brotherhood's there, and it's always been there, but obviously it's come under question in the last week or so. So, I mean, yeah, it is those little things that I guess we were looking out for, especially that first Charlie Cameron goal, because obviously his name has been heavily attached to everything that's been going on. So to see the boys get around and when he kicked that first goal was great to see, and a few other boys whose names been thrown up around over the last couple of weeks, just seeing how players interact with those. And I mean, from the outside looking in, unless you'd heard the stories, you wouldn't know anything was off other than the poor start to the season on the field as well. So great to sort of put all that stuff hopefully to bed for now, and it may be the last we hear of it. It may pop up again, who knows. I guess we'll just sort of see how that tracks along. But as far as first quarters go, it's another one that was very, very quite good, but didn't exactly fill you with confidence knowing that we had a good first quarter, because we've had those before this year.
I think it was probably a little bit different because it was sort of, it wasn't a absurdly efficient like inside 50 economy. So it seemed to me like it was a little bit more sustainable throughout although we didn't kind of put on the amount of goals we did, it was sort of, it seemed like it was something that could have been maintained and was more or less, I guess, not entirely though. So
yeah, the third quarter seemed to be a bit of an issue for the Brisbane Lions this year, and whilst it wasn't a complete capitulation that we had this week, there was definitely 10-15 minutes where North were well in control of momentum and ball movement and hitting the scoreboard and everything. They ended up winning the quarter by 2 points, but the back sort of 10 minutes we did correct it, arrest momentum, and put a couple of goals on ourselves, so it wasn't a complete blowout. Having said that, once again, looking ahead, another team like Melbourne at the MCG may make us punish, may hurt us a little bit more.
I think that, North Melbourne are obviously in quite a different point in their football journey. And they have kind of the license to be able to sort of say, like, let's look at trying to win one quarter, similar to where we were, 7 or 8 years ago. Just where, the metrics are slightly different. And I made the comment at the time, I was sort of like, well, they probably were just trying to do something in that quarter and, trying to win the quarter, and they did. And, fair play to them, but the way they played in that quarter was a lot more aggressive than in the majority of the game. So it could have just been that they were trying some stuff. They put Wardlaw to kneel. It was them, preparing for the future rather than us just trying to win a game. And we probably had taken our foot off the gas a little bit, which is fine-ish. I don't know. But not the biggest cause for concern for me.
Not the biggest, but there is still, I guess there's still room for improvement that we want to see, especially the next 3 weeks. We've got some pretty tough assignments, so you wouldn't want to be taking your foot off the gas against a Melbourne at the MCG, against Geelong with the way they're going at the moment, or GWS down in Canberra as well. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. Not real cause for concern, but I mean, and it's good to just get a more four-quarter effort than we have seen the first 3 weeks for sure.
Yeah, the old four-quarter performances, chasing the dragon, but we'll see how we go. One of the bright spots in the first half was my new favourite player, Kai Lohman.
Oh, don't you?
No, got to be serious. I've given him a fair bit of criticism in the past, and that's purely a circumstantial thing. But he really was like, everything going through him was fantastic in that first half. Kicked a couple of goals, good on the set shot, moves well, left and right foot. There was a bit of I think a bit of questions about Dev Rob coming out of the team, but I think if they're not going to play Dev Rob as a centre and they're going to play him as a high half forward, you might as well play Kai Lohman. So I think Dev Rob is wasted as a high half forward. I don't think that's his position. It's definitely not where he plays in the VFL when he dominates. So if they're going to play him there, play Kai Lohman instead.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one because I guess, and a lot of people have said leading up to it, like, give Kai Lohman a full game, see what he can do, because we've always known that the potential is there, and he obviously showed what he can do with the full game on Friday. It didn't take him long to warm up into it either. Like, he was pretty much from the get-go, especially the first half, he really shone. And he was number one for score involvements for a period of the time in that game as well. So he had a great game. No complaints there. But it's sort of like Dev is falling victim to the same thing that Jared Berry is, because we're all sitting here going, well, Jared Berry's an inside mid. That's where he plays his best footy. It's the same thing for Dev Rob. But when you've got Dunkley, Neal, McCluggage as your sort of starting mids, and, Klug had to wait forever to get an inside spot as well, with JL and Reece and others floating through, then Zorks. So there's only so many spots in the midfield.
Yeah, I mean, McCluggage really cut his teeth as that, winger role in the beginning of the 666 era, where we kind of took advantage of that. But that is for a couple of years ago. No, it was really good to see, and it's nice to see someone new. Like, I was a little bit, and probably you were too, just like, I like Darcy Gardner a lot, but the potential of seeing Logan Morris play, it's sort of like, how much worse could it have been?
Yeah, obviously Darcy kicked a goal, which is fantastic. He played his role, but I can't help but feel, and I'm sure, plenty of other Lions supporters were saying the same thing, and he was on the plane. He was on the plane down to Adelaide. We saw that in, some of the social posts that the Lions did. And I actually put an article up on our Patreon of, I did a list of everyone on our senior list yet to debut, and I included Carter Michael because he'd only played that one sort of half game against Essendon. I sort of did like how likely are they to make take a spot in 2024, and I basically had written that Logan Morris I put him as a 7 out of 10, and I said I think he's probably likely to play tonight. So it was a bit of a shock when he didn't get named, But Fags, it's been a pretty stable team for a while. This team, they're not handing out spots left, right, and center.
No, and I think there's like, in terms of the team system, obviously we're struggling a little bit across halfback just due to lack of personnel, but largely the team's issues are kind of fixed, and I mean, there's a reason for that. Uh, a reason, a big JL reason why that's not an issue, but it's fine. Like we'll see how we go next week, and it could be fine, it could be not. So,
Well,
I definitely think we match up pretty well.
it seems that spot is not up for grabs. But over the last couple of years, that sort of wing and halfback role, Fags has been rotating players through, and now he's doing the same thing in this sort of third tall forward swing position as well. So he's had Darcy, he had Darcy Fort. I still reckon we may see Logan Morris again, especially if he continues to put in really solid VFL performances where he's kicking 3 or 4 goals. It's going to be hard to say no, you haven't earned a call up. He didn't really get to press his case this week with a bye in the VFL, but I think we'll see him at some point.
Yeah, and you want to have that element of reward for effort too, because prattled on about it last week, but you want to be able to utilize your squad, within the season. You can't have the same 23,
Yep.
22 blokes playing every game, because you'll end up with them all dying in finals. So it's just not a sustainable idea, and using your squad is the thing that you should be doing. I think that largely there should be more changes happening all the time with teams, but it's not quite, it hasn't quite come over here yet in terms of the way the game is played. It hasn't been caught on because people focus, I think, so much on solidity and, like the relationship of football in terms of players on the field and stuff like that. So I think it's something that could change in the next 5 years, but for now, I'd like to just see a few more fringe players used, because, what if there is an injury and you've got someone that has to come in? You'd rather them be a little bit more, less green in terms of them playing in the first team. So,
what did you make of Norwood, the Oval? I wasn't a huge fan.
I know. Sorry, I just had to, my cat was just cleaning itself. Full view of the cameras. I had to get him out of there. Norwood, yeah.
Not a big fan.
Like it.
I'm not a big fan of the long, very straight boundary line. Didn't necessarily dig that all that much. Thin ground obviously suited us and our game style. It sort of forced us to use the corridor a little bit more, and we were obviously much more adept at that than North, and we were able to shut down their corridor usage quite easily and sort of force them to kick long down the line, which is exactly what we wanted. So it did suit us for our game style, I suppose. But how often are we going to play a game at an oval like that? Maybe once more at Cardinia Park if we play there.
Which we're not. So.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, I mean, it was, you said to me, I'd take Mount Barker any day of the week, and said, well, that comes gift wrapped and packaged with Kelly Underwood. So how are you feeling with that one? But she's all right. Bone to pick with Lynchy, who was on commentary. So firstly, he said, Lions are a long down the line team, and it's like, no, we're not. We don't want to be. That's normally the last resort. We want to be hitting the corridor and, attacking as we do when we're playing our best football. The long down the line is the last resort, and we don't really have the contested marks to be able to do that. So, Lynchy, you're on notice. Secondly, Lynchy doesn't seem to understand the idea of reissue Guernseys or heritage shirts.
No,
because he was talking about he's like, oh, look at that one, it's from 95. It's like, dude, it's got the sponsor that we had 2 years ago. I've got one, it's there, and it certainly isn't from 1985. So Lynchy, get your eyes tested, do some reading. I love you. And also, sorry, hold on, he was critical of someone trying to kick the hell out of the ball from a short range snap.
Hey, that was hippie,
and it went wrong. And one of my favorite goals is him against Collingwood kicking a snap that basically goes out of the gabba for no reason. Yeah, I was just like, Lynchy, that is so pot kettle black. But whatever. So that's my gripe of the week is Alistair Lynch.
Sure. I mean, if that's your biggest gripe, we're doing all right, I suppose. What else do you say?
Actually, it's not my biggest gripe. My biggest gripe was the umpiring in the Carlton Fremantle game, but let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's been enough said from everyone on that, including ex-umpires. Ex-umpires that were involved in Brownlow vote leaking suddenly think they have the moral high ground. Jesus.
Yeah, I don't think that's. Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, is there anything else you really want to say about this game? I thought for North, I thought LDU tried his heart out all day. The other thing that was a bit interesting, a couple of things that North tried to do was Charlie Comben down back, and by the end of the game, he looked quite good. A fair amount of intercept possessions to his name. And Hugh Greenwood playing up forward as the negator on Harris Andrews, and I thought Harris played that one quite well. He's been known to, when he's had that specific player to try and take him out of the game, players have done a much better job than Hugh Greenwood did. So I thought he handled that all right.
Yeah, there's not too much to say regarding North. Like, they've got a bunch of young, raw talents that are going to be good soon.
Yeah, that McKercher, I mean, that Colby McKercher did some nice things throughout the game. I like the look of Dersma as well. Played a fantastic game. Other than that, Aiden Core, I mean, Cam Zerha has had to, I don't know if this is fairly recent, but he's deleted his Instagram as well. He had a pretty shocking game for his standards that he set himself. Even Suvlaki probably could have hurt us on the scoreboard a little bit more than he did. But yeah,
Curtis as well as shows a bit like they'll all get more opportunities when they get more inside 50s and stuff. Like I think watching the Carlton game the week before, like Curtis is he's got a good shoot on him for goal. They're fine. They'll be all right. They just need to not be shit basically, and they won't soon because they'll improve with time.
I thought Oscar did all right. I mean, he's had a pretty poor start to the year from Oscar's standards. I thought he was fine. I wouldn't say he got the better of Tristan Sherry, but I thought he had a pretty good game.
Took a couple of marks, I think.
He did 2 marks next to his name.
That's a hell of a lot when you're talking about him. So he loves playing against North. No, I mean, the game basically happened and we were better than them because we were better than them. So it's like good to get a win, but that's kind of all that you can really read into it. Like,
yeah, it's a little bit like that. I think the most pleasing thing was our key forwards, very similar to last year when they were under fire from after that game against the Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. Obviously, Joe, 5 goals, 4, plus another couple out on the bounce, so he certainly had his 20 touches as well. Serviceable in the ruck, 12 marks, a lot of those inside 50. Great game from Joe and Eric. Whilst he was pretty nervous. Like you could see his confidence was down with the first couple of shots on goal. But he warmed into the game, clunked himself 4 marks in the end, which is, you'd like that to be a little bit higher, but 3 goals, 2 in the end as well. So if that's what you're getting from your key forwards, you're in for a good day, largely speaking.
Yeah, I did notice Hipwood had both his wrist and thumbs all strapped up. I don't know if that's something new for him, but like he's normally a wrist strapper, not normally thumbs, which could be indicative. Like, I played volleyball in high school,
sure,
and I had to strap my thumbs from having dislocated. So good fun. So maybe there was something like that. I don't know. The big problem with me is probably just Charlie Cameron can't seem to score a set shot. Seemingly, like it's always snaps and stuff like that, which is weird because is that just like demons in his head at the moment, or what's going on? But also 6 disposals. You mentioned four tackles is serviceable, and probably I'd say the minimum if you're gonna collectively as a small forward group have X amount of tackles. You know, just, it doesn't seem like he's quite right.
Yeah, and like he's up against Aiden Core, and he wasn't. Like, you'd think there would be a noticeable difference in speed in those two, and there just didn't seem to be. So something is off with Charlie at the moment, and I wonder if he is battling some sort of leg injury, and I wonder if it's that planting foot that is on his set shots where he's got that sort of time to think about it, and because when he's on the snap, it just sort of happens. So, and yeah, there's a noticeable lack of pace compared to what we've seen from him, especially against someone like Aiden Core, who he should be able to put 3 meters on very quickly. So, yeah, just a bit of a watch and see, I guess.
Yeah, not too much more to say from me, I reckon.
Yeah, Darcy Wilmot, another great game. Zorks, he's probably been our most consistent performer across the first 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, he's obviously made a few blues, but I think
Wilmot or Zorks?
both of those two, I think they've probably been our most consistent, those two. They haven't had flawless games, but I think, for solidity's sake, across the first month and a bit, I think they've probably been probably our two most consistent, along with Ryan Lester as well, probably.
Yeah, Froggy was good. I think, yeah, against the better team, there would have been some issues I would have had with some of the stuff that he did pertaining to things we talked about last week. But let's not go into that. Let's talk about the positives more so. So, 4 points on the board. Season's finally been started.
Yep.
By way of, that metric. But, yeah, do you want to do some votes?
Yeah, let's do some votes for hop on brewerytours.com.au. Book yourself a half or full day tour right now. Experience and learn the brewing process across some of the greatest craft breweries in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. For me, the 3 goes to Joe, 2 to Neil, and 1 to Klug. And Klug's a bit unlucky there because he had a great game and to only walk away with 1.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a bit off air. I thought Klug got a lot of the ball, but his inside 50 kicks, which are normally his best part of his game, were not very good. He had, I think, 10 inside 50s for no score assists, or goal assists. So he seemed a little bit weirdly rusty, but he was getting the ball and his hands were good. So for me, I've gone Joe 3, Neil 2, and Lohman with 1.
Yeah, that's a fair call there. Yeah, it's just Klug didn't seem to be as damaging with the ball as he normally is. I think that's probably the thing you notice the most about Huey and his disposals. When you think he's got 36 touches, you'd think at least 20 to 25 of those are dart passes, or, there just didn't seem to be as many of those on the weekend. So, yeah.
Yeah, his disposal efficiency wasn't great.
Yeah.
Which is really uncommon for him. And I think also unlucky, Jared Berry had a really good game. And I think it's worth mentioning because it gets mentioned a lot when he's not. So he again was, cool. High or mid-20s, lots of tackles, contested possessions, and was pretty good in terms of disposal. I feel like he's moving a bit better.
Yep.
And yeah, Zach Bailey as well. We talked not at all about him. But he seemed to be offensively kicking more drop punts and less mongrel spirals, so I was happy with that.
100%. It's just some of his defensive efforts that are a bit... He seems quite focused on trying to make highlight reels rather than doing the team thing sometimes. And that's not all the time, but I cannot believe he did not get pinged for holding the ball. I can't remember if it was the first or second quarter, but... He handballed the ball to himself over a bloke, picked it up, went the don't argue on someone else, got tackled, and dished out a handball at the 11th hour. They did a dump kick, and then Joey marked it on the 50, put through a goal. And I thought Zach was very unlucky. Like, he was very lucky there to not get pinged for holding the ball because he had plenty of opportunities to do something proper with it. But he was too busy trying to recreate the goals from the grand final.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if... at least that didn't cost a game, like a certain other dump kick outside of 50 that was a mark, that it was an advantage that was called back and then intercepted. But, who cares about Fremantle and Carlton? It was interesting. Like, I mean, I was watching, what game was it last night? What was on last night? I can't even remember. Geelong
Yeah,
and
Bulldogs and
someone.
Geelong. Yeah,
And they were saying, oh, Carlton kicked the last three last night. And I'm sitting there going, are you out of your mind? They like shouldn't have got any of those.
yeah,
Like, I can't believe like when they had what was it, a holding the ball that went to Aish. Aish kicked it down the line and it was clunked up on center wing, and then they pulled it back so that Carlton could reset up. Then they kicked the ball down the wing, it got intercepted, went into Kerno, and then all of the shit that happened at the end of the game. It's like, oh,
yeah,
the last three goals, they were basically gift wrapped them. Like,
yeah. It was an absolute nightmare.
goodness me.
Yeah,
Yeah, frustrating, and there's no right to really be frustrated. West Coast showed a little bit.
yeah. I was very.
That was a surprisingly fun game to watch, I got to say.
It really was. As was Gold Coast GWS. Crazy to think that.
Yeah, I didn't see any of the games today. I was otherwise disposed. But tell about today's games.
Well, Hawthorn and Collingwood's just wrapped up, and Collingwood's walked away with, I think, a 5-point win in that one. All today's games were quite close, in fact. Richmond got off to a pretty, I'm not going to say lengthy lead. It was like a 20-odd point lead against the Saints before the Saints pegged it back, and they ended up winning by 7 goals. Collingwood won by 5 points in the end as well. They were ahead for most of the game. The Hawks just tried to peg it back, but just ran out of time. And Gold Coast actually were in front at, I think, maybe halftime, three-quarter time, maybe halftime. And they were within sort of like 8 to 10 points for, huge swathes of that match. It wasn't until the last quarter where GWS said, yeah, all right, let's put these guys to the sword. They ended up walking away with 28-point win, which I think most Gold Coast fans would take, especially when you're swinging 7 changes. McAndrew back in the team and looked amazing. So
That's good.
Yeah,
We know that I'm a bit of a fan of him. So.
yeah, absolutely. I think most of the AFL world are. For some reason, it's taken Dimmer a little bit to give him a game, but he looked really, really good. So yeah, what else do we have? Geelong Bulldogs was close for a while as well. Yeah, Sydney West Coast, that was crazy. How good was Harley Reid though?
He was pretty good. I've got a bit of a weird, funny story about the Bulldogs and the Geelong game where there was a point where Jamara, I think, he like butchered the ball inside 50, then missed 2 goals, and I was like, "You peanut! Like, if you'd kicked the 2 of those goals, you'd be like 11 points better off." And then in my mind, it was like he had. So I was thinking it was like a 2-point game when it was like a 3-goal game for a good portion, just because obviously I've got like a cesspool for a mind. So that's what it's like to watch football with me. Moronic.
Well, aside from our game and Port and Essendon, they were all relatively close games. I mean, GWS and Gold Coast blew it a little bit at the end. But, I mean, even Thursday night, that was only 15 points. And then the 2 beltings from us and Port. And then everything else was 28 points or less, and most of them single-digit margin. So, I mean, that's great. That's
pretty good.
That's a good gather round.
Yeah, it's kind of what you want. Was it just me, or did it seem like there was a little bit less kind of like promotion for it this year, or is it just did I not pay enough attention or something?
I think it's really hard to get a gauge on up here. I think because we're used to not having footy in Queensland every other week, I think Melbourne would really notice a distinct lack of football. And I think if you were in Adelaide, you'd really be immersed in it. It's hard to really get a gauge on it up here of what sort of a festivity it is. But I'd like to go one year for sure.
Yeah, not to continue throwing shade at Carlton, but utter bullshit that their away game at Fremantle happened at Adelaide, which is closer to them than Perth is to. I think I read something as well insane that like Collingwood have to travel out of Melbourne twice more for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's hectic, isn't it?
Something like that. It's like, meanwhile we've got away games against West Coast, had Fremantle. We've got to go to Canberra. We've got to go to Adelaide 2 more times. It just seems a little bit. There's got to be some sort of better way, particularly between like the West Australian teams, where it's like Perth, West Coast should go like they should come to Brisbane and they should play home against Gold Coast, and Gold Coast should play, away at Fremantle and Brisbane. Like it should be a bit like that. I remember in high school, like we had a team in Toowoomba and a team in TSS that we used to have to play TSS and Toowoomba, and like you would only ever play one year,
Yeah.
home, and the other one would, they've got to figure that sort of thing out, because the idea of going to Optus twice, it's just, traveling to WA twice, South Australia 3 times, Canberra. I think we also go to the SCG. So it's like we've literally got every away game possible. It's like how is that? And then you look at things like Carlton not leaving Melbourne for 6 weeks, and you're like, and fair enough, Melbourne had to stay in Adelaide, but it just seems like it would almost be fairer if Gather Round was Victorian teams playing Victorian teams.
Yeah. No, I understand that. There's talk. I mean, the talk is once Tasmania comes in, there's going to be 3 gather rounds, and then they've even spoken about potentially a third showdown between Adelaide and Port Adelaide during gather round, so neither of them get a home ground advantage during gather round. It's just.
I mean, I feel like that's the least of the worries, because it's
Yeah.
going to happen anyway. I don't think that Adelaide playing Melbourne at gather rounds really going to be any different than Adelaide playing Melbourne not at gather round. If anything, they'd probably have less fans or fewer fans. It'd be more of like that weird melting pot of just footy people. But the idea that you can have Sydney playing West Coast, admittedly, that's probably one of the better opportunities, is to have a team from one side of the country and the other. But like, yeah, Carlton playing Fremantle and that being Fremantle's home game, get the fuck out. Not a chance. Not a chance.
I mean, it's a weird one, and I'm glad I'm not in charge of fixturing, because I'm sure there's so much that goes into it that we don't even know about. Anyway, that's fine. Melbourne this week. Let's have a look at Melbourne, thanks to Crisp Communications. crispcoms.co, get yourself a free Brisbane Lions Fancast sticker. Melbourne at the MCG, Cozzy Pickett at this stage is rubbed out. I don't think they'll be challenging that one. This is his 3rd suspension in a bit over a year for a very similar action. This one falls more into the Maynard
low
type,
impact.
Yeah. But I'm not unhappy to see him miss a week.
No, did he get 1 week?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about fair, like, because I think sometimes with these, like, in terms of comparative to the other ones where someone leaves the ground, this is very minimal. But at the same time, why did he choose to jump? Well, he jumps. Why did he choose to change angles and then elbow it in the head? Like, this is stupid. So you deserve a week for moronic decisions. Good. Fair enough. Yeah, Melbourne are a hard one. Like
they're playing good footy.
Pretty good.
They're playing really good footy.
I don't like them. Okay. I hurt my ribs at indoor soccer. Like, how long ago?
I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks.
Nah, more than that. I think I would go 6 or 7 weeks. It still hurts.
Yeah.
It took me, I think, 5 weeks to go back. How the hell is Stephen May coming back from 3 broken ribs in, like, what was it, 11 days?
Yeah. Well, you'd imagine he's got a fair amount of padding around them, and he's getting jabbed up to the eyeballs before he takes the field.
Yeah, I guess so, but it doesn't help, because it's like the breathing part that's the bad bit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It just is. I saw him go into the names, and I'm like, I sent you a message. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I feel really shortchanged, because mine still really hurt. Really hurt. And I didn't even break any. I mean, maybe I did. I didn't actually get scans, so who knows. But Yeah, they seem pretty settled. I think their lower kind of less good players are playing quite good footy at the moment.
Yeah, their bottom
I think
six,
that was,
their
yeah,
bottom six is really quite good. Yeah,
which is a bit of a low hanging fruit thing because I think Fox Footy and Channel 7 were both saying the same thing. But sometimes they get it right. And I would agree with that. But goodness me, after that Adelaide game, would it kill them to interview someone that isn't Gawn and Petrarca? Like, if their bottom six players are playing so well, interview one of those knobs.
no,
Like, do something different.
yeah. I mean, we've obviously got our work cut out for them. And last time we did play them at the MCG, we saw what worked against them, and that is obviously not bombing it down the line. So we saw that we'd switch the play back forth maybe 3 or 4 times before the opportunity opened up, and then we'd move accordingly and just try and keep it away from Max Gawn or May or Lever at all costs. And Hawthorn tried to do that a couple of weeks ago, and they did it, I guess, too well, if you say, and they ended up just chip kicking around and ended up with 52 marks in the first quarter or something like that. So,
Far too slowly, I think.
yeah. So, I mean, the recipe's there, and we've seen teams when they target Max Gawn physically, that can sort of work to their advantage as well. We've never really done that. We're not really that sort of intimidating sort of team that will go after a particular player like that. I mean, I would like that a little bit. I mean, we've had moments, Dunkley on Cripps, but it's not sort of like overtly, let's really intimidate them, physical sort of stuff.
No, that's more just like wearing him like a flannel.
Yeah.
Not that you wear a flannel, but the only if you bring the physical intensity, kind of like we did in the prelim against Carlton, which if you remember my notes on that game were just like big hits featuring the Lions.
Yes,
because
that's
there were
right.
so many of them, which is probably one of my favorite readings, as it were. But no, I think there's plenty of people that we don't like in that Melbourne team. Harrison Petty will be there. Yeah, Max Gawn will be there. Yeah, Clayton Oliver will be there. Plenty of people. Bailey Fritsch. The list keeps going.
Yeah. And do we have the answers for all of them, I guess, is the question. And was that game against North Melbourne, whilst it was nice to get a win against an opposition, is it is it a nice warm up, or I don't know, is it a false sense of that's what we've got?
Well, I think in terms it looks like the teams we've actually played, like although Collingwood hadn't won coming into our game, like they're still a good team. Carlton are obviously undefeated, and Fremantle, like I got to say, in the preseason, I called Fremantle being far better than they were given any credit for. I thought they would bounce, maybe not into the 8, but at the same time, I didn't do a fictional ladder, so fuck you. Maybe they were in the 8. Don't know. Um, but yeah, I think we've played like a reasonably high caliber of teams, except for North Melbourne, and we dished them out. And we've had decent patches against,
Yeah.
obviously Collingwood and Carlton for sure. The Fremantle game was probably our worst performance, I think. But
Yep.
yeah, like it'll be like we've shown that we can perform at a higher level. We just need to do it, and we need to pull our fingers out. And the statement of intent in the first half of the game against North Melbourne was kind of like, guys, why did it take you this long to realize that you needed to pull your finger out and work hard?
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't take you 3 losses into the game and a infidelity scandal. Like, do it properly.
Yeah, and look, if that's the catalyst that we needed to galvanize the group, then I'm sure there'll be a lot of people saying, yeah, like as Chris Scott says, the juice is worth the squeeze. But yeah, I think we definitely need to lift it up a notch from what we just saw on the weekend to bring it to Melbourne down at the MCG.
For sure, yeah, because I don't think that you can't play bad footy and win against Melbourne. I don't think it's really going to happen because they really punish you on that sort of front. But we do, and we have traditionally kind of matched up pretty well against them. I think with Darcy Gardner, and I think he'll stay in the team, he'll try and get that kind of McStay-ish role, or the Jake Melksham style role on one of Lever or probably Lever, and then I think it tends to do all right against May, just in terms of keeping him a bit honest. But you know, do we want to look at potential changes?
I don't think there will be any.
Yeah.
To be perfectly fair, I think it's hard to make any changes on a team that's just won by 70 points. So I think it'll largely be the same. I can't see any need for change unless Connor McKenna is right to go. But even then, I'd be giving him another week off whatever the doctor says anyway, because he's already injured that hamstring twice this year. So um, that would be the only change I could possibly foresee, but I don't see it. I think it's
Who
going to
would
be.
you have coming out if that was the case?
Well, that's the thing. It'd probably be Tunstall and then shuffling.
Hmm.
It'd be, or maybe Fletcher, who he's not doing anything amazing. He's not doing anything like horribly wrong, but he's just sort of coasting at the moment for mine. And I think,
Yeah, it's almost like there's an element of growing pains with him right at the moment, and we saw it with Wilmot. I think middle of last year, before he kind of settled down back when he was playing on the wing,
yeah,
there was elements of games where he was sort of flitting in and out. So it can happen for sure where you have a younger player that they just kind of hit a bit of a plateau.
yeah,
Um, and I think sometimes it's probably better to stick with it and just let it kind of course correct rather than to pull him out of the team. So
well, that's it.
yeah, I think
I don't think he's detrimental to the team or anything at the moment, but
no,
I,
no, but I don't think Dusty Wilmot was last year either. Like,
yeah,
it was just one of those things where you're like, he's only doing cool stuff like less frequently. Like, can we have you do cool stuff more? It's more fun.
yeah,
And
but
Fletcher, we want you to kick 3 goals in an elimination final. Like, cool.
well, that's it. I mean, I don't see any changes. Do you see anything happening at the selection table? I wouldn't have thought so, unless someone's pulled up sore and a 6 day break.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing for me is like, is Charlie Cameron's leg fine? If not, then he comes out. But like, probably not. I think it's fine. Like Van Rooyen as a second ruck for them. Danaher. I think Danaher would want a bit of his time again from last year. I think against Melbourne, where he got a bit roughhoused by Van Rooyen in the ruck. But you know, I think changes won't be made
No,
unless they're forced.
yeah, no, I think it'll be largely fine. Um, they'll obviously have to make a change with Cozzy coming out, but they're playing really good footy, so we're going to need to bring our absolute best. And a win out of the next 3 weeks, if we can win 2 of them, I think that'd be pretty good. But a win at the MCG would mean a lot for this group.
Yeah, it would be the first time in a long time in the home and away season. So it's important. It's something that they need to do, and it's something that they're probably overdue. So looking ahead, it's kind of like they're probably due to win, 2 or 3 of those games, and I think they really need to
Yeah,
if they're really going to show, stamp their mark on where they are this season. Because if we go into where we were, like 3-3 would be great, or 4-3 rather. 4-3 would be awesome. But yeah, playing catch up's a hard thing to do.
certainly is. But fingers crossed that we can pull something out and get some wins. All right. Well, there's a few memorable games to choose from in recent history between Melbourne and Brisbane. And I think we sort of formed a fairly decent rivalry with Melbourne over the last couple of years, and they have bullied us, to put it bluntly. Aside from last year where we got the win at the Gabba and that obviously heartbreaking games out at the MCG, we beat them in that semi-final. But prior to that, they were winning by 10 goals at the Gabba as well, like just absolutely monstering us, and that largely came down to their size and skill in the midfield.
Yeah, it seemed like I think 2019 and 2020 we beat them. I think I talk about that game against Melbourne quite a bit in terms of rotating through the midfield and how I think our midfield group might have stagnated a little bit. But then 2021 roll around where obviously they were like pretty hot to trot, winning a premiership quite handily. And we had absolutely no chance in our qualifying final. Like it just was never going to happen. And they kicked away. We were kind of close. I think there had been times of we sort of were trying to figure out how to beat them, and we never really figured it out until we got to that elimination final. So the elimination final obviously washed away that horrendous Gabba game.
Yeah.
But since then, yeah, last year was a bit of a horrible time, wasn't it?
It's a weird one because obviously up until the blackout at the Gabba, we were playing fantastic footy, and then the
Oh
blackout.
yeah, I've even forgot about it. Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot about the blackout game. Yeah.
Yeah, we were what 8 goals in front, and had the lights just stayed on, we potentially could have just kept going on with that. Who knows? They could have mounted a charge regardless. But the lights went
They
out. We
wouldn't
came
have.
back on. They came back, and it got to within 11 points. Sort of a false economy there. Um, and obviously the two middle quarters, second and third quarters that we played last year at the MCG against Melbourne was, we keep referring back to it as some of the best footy we've played in the last 3-4 years. That first quarter against Carlton this year aside, I think it was hard to argue with that. So we've managed to play good footy against them. Didn't get the result at the MCG, which is one we sorely would have loved, because it just feeds that narrative. And I guess there would be players that it's in their head playing at the MCG. It's there. A win at the MCG, I think, would just mean a lot for this group right now, who's got off to a very shaky start in 2024 to secure a win against a genuine, well, they're top 2 at the moment, a genuine top 4 team at the MCG. It's almost worth 2 wins at this point.
I do think it would mean a lot to the group, and I think it would be a big statement of intent. In terms of classic games, what about that one? I don't remember. It might have been 2014, the worst game of football ever. Okay.
I do remember that, yeah.
Either that or Reece Matheson getting 700 high free kicks.
That's right.
Not a lot of classics.
I remember that game because we were wearing an old Fitzroy top for that one, the worst game ever, and yeah, as a neutral watching that, you'd be like, I want my money back. This is absolute pus. It just goes to show where we both were at that stage as well, though.
Yeah, but I think if I'm going classic, I'm definitely going to the elimination final.
Yeah.
First time I've seen them win at the MCG.
Jack Lever
I don't have a great record. Jake Lever having an absolute seizure in the back line.
Yes.
I still think that my best memory from that game was I was sitting watching with my partner, and when Cozzy Pickett got the ball in the goal square and hit the post, and we both just we've done it, we've got it. He somehow contrived to hit the post from 9 meters, and that was kind of it, I think. Some weird stuff going on in the crowd. We had a really loud child yelling in our ear, so we moved seats. Then someone decided to angle grind a chair right behind us without telling us. It's what is going on here? MCG, sort it out. So we got deafened twice, once organically and once by machine. So.
How good.
But we won the game and it was great.
Yeah, it's really hard to go past that semi-final 2022. Lots of great memories, and I think, we'd come from 5th. We'd just come off a tough game against Richmond. 2 weeks earlier, they absolutely belted us at the Gabba. All the chat was about Brisbane at the MCG, hadn't won there in 10 years, and it's well, I went in with very little hope, especially when they sort of blew us open in the first quarter and a half, and I think by halftime, I think we kicked the last 2 goals leading into halftime, including that Cal Archie one, and it's all right, well, I think we're exactly half their score. It was 22-44 or something like that, and I was well, there's a bit of a chance here, but knowing what I know about us against Melbourne and us at the MCG, we already had a great finals win. Might just have to be happy with that, but yeah, fantastic stuff to watch that all unfold.
Just having a quick look at the 2019 home and away season game. Eric Hipwood, 5 goals.
He's got a decent record against Melbourne.
Yeah, that was where I think he kicked 4 goals either side of maybe 3/4 time and really dominate, like, cause that game to be blown absolutely wide open. So well done to him. Can you do that again, dude? Good.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really it would mean just as much to see those two key forwards back it up again and put together a couple of solid weeks, especially against the likes of Stephen May and Jack Lever as well. So yeah, they've got a good team, not too many holes in their list, and their depth is obviously is quite handy as well. So yeah, Melbourne at the MCG, Geelong up at the Gabba, and then GWS at Canberra. It's a tough couple of weeks.
Sure is, but why else would you want to watch football?
That's true. Let's just enjoy the 70-point win while we can, I suppose.
I've already forgotten about it, eh? The harsh realities of it.
All right. Well, I think
Did
that
we have
just
any,
no, we
any
didn't.
questions this week?
No one won. It was, as you said, it's all just been sort of quiet, and I think that's sort of everyone's just breathing a collective sigh of relief that yeah, we're on the board, but there is also at the back of our mind, it's North Melbourne, so you know.
What can you really read into it?
Yeah.
And we've established a bit, but not that much. So fair play, Tom.
All right. Well, until next week, where we're hopefully sitting here after another win that we can probably spread a little bit more joy around. That's been the Brisbane Lions Fancast. Thanks to Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. Check out the website, join the Patreon. We're giving away that double pass to the Q Clash at the website as well, so make sure you jump on board there. Any final thoughts?
I go, boys. Bloody smash them. Sorry, I felt like a fucking warmed up corpse tonight.